Most people think of radio waves as invisible ghosts, meaningless data passing through our bodies, our walls, and our dreams every second of the day. We assume they are empty. But what if the static you hear between stations isn't just interference? What if it's a doorway? For decades, shortwave enthusiasts and late-night listeners have reported a specific enigmatic broadcast known only as the lost frequency. It doesn't transmit music, and it doesn't transmit news. It transmits an invitation. Those who tune in don't just hear sounds, they witness manifestations. This is the investigation into a signal that doesn't just play in your ears, but summons things into your room. Be warned, after tonight, you might never look at a radio dial the same way again. Because once you find the frequency, it has already found you. The static that calls. The phenomenon started in the late 70s during the height of the Cold War numbers stations. Amateur operators began picking up a signal at 14.2 megahertz that shouldn't have existed. It wasn't a spy code. It was a rhythmic, biological sound, like a slow, heavy heartbeat layered under the sound of a woman weeping in a language that felt older than Latin. The first recorded victim was a hobbyist named Elias. According to his journal, he stumbled upon the frequency at 3 a.m. He described the sound as honey-thick static, but as he listened, the temperature in his basement dropped 20 degrees. He reported that the shadows in the corner of his room began to move in sync with the heartbeat on the radio. When his neighbors found him the next morning, the radio was still on, but Elias was gone. The only thing left in the room was a layer of fine gray ash on his chair and the lingering smell of ozone and wet earth. Whispers from the airwaves. How can a sound wave become a summons? Some theorists believe in electromagnetic resonance, the idea that certain frequencies can vibrate the fabric of our reality just enough to thin the veil. Others suggest that the lost frequency is a form of consciousness technology, a signal that turns the human brain into a receiver for entities that exist in the white space between dimensions. History is littered with these whispers. In ancient folklore, there were singing stones that caused people to vanish. In the digital age, these have evolved into binaural beats hidden in the deep web, audio files that claim to induce astral projection but leave the listener's body vacant for a few seconds, long enough for something else to step in. We spoke to a survivor who encountered the signal through a digital SDR last year. She told us that the moment the frequency hit its peak, her reflection in the darkened window stopped mimicking her movements. It just stood there, staring at the radio, its mouth open in a perfect silent circle. The hunt for the phantom signal. To find the lost frequency, we didn't go to a lab. We went to the zone of silence, a remote stretch of high desert plains where the atmosphere is thin and man-made interference is non-existent. We brought high-gain antennas and wide-band receivers. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the needle jumped. The signal didn't look like a normal wave on our monitors. It looked like a fractal, jagged, repeating patterns that seemed to pulse with intent.
As the audio fed into our headphones, the equipment began to glitch. The LCD screens on our recorders started displaying names on our team, followed by the dates of their deaths. It wasn't just a broadcast, it was an interrogation. The radio was reading the data in the room, our heat signatures, our heart rates, perhaps even our memories, and converting them into a feedback loop. Then the manifestations began. It started with audio shadows, the sound of footsteps on the gravel outside our van, even though the motion sensors showed nothing. Then the physical disturbances. Our thermal cameras picked up a humanoid shape standing directly in front of the antenna. It was cold, colder than the desert night. But the most terrifying part was the voice mimicry. The radio stopped the heartbeat sound and began to play back a conversation we had earlier that evening. But in the recording, our voices were distorted, stretched out, and filled with a malice we never felt. The signal was taking our presence and editing it. It was creating a version of us that didn't belong in this world. The line between the static and the people standing in that desert was blurring. We felt a heavy, crushing pressure on our chests, as if the air itself was trying to solidify into a shape. Do you dare to listen? Engaging with the lost frequency isn't a hobby, it's a gamble with your own soul. The scientific community calls it auditory pareidolia, the brain's tendency to find patterns in random noise. But pareidolia doesn't move furniture. It doesn't leave handprints on the inside of a radio's display glass. There is a theory that we are the ones who created the signal, that our billions of radio waves we've pumped into the sky for a century have finally coalesced into a sentient, hungry storm, and now it's looking for a way back down. The warning. If you're listening to this right now, you are a receiver. Your body is currently being passed through by thousands of signals you can't see. Most of them are harmless, but one of them is waiting for you to turn the dial. If you ever find yourself scanning the radio late at night and the static starts to sound like a voice you haven't heard since you were a child, turn it off. Don't listen to the words. Don't try to decode the message. Because if a signal can summon something into your world, imagine what happens when you decide to transmit back. Have you ever heard a sound on the radio that felt wrong? Tell us your experience in the comments, but be careful what you say. The airwaves are always listening.